All right. So my very first student visa was rejected. My first express entry profile came up as ineligible. My second express entry profile came through as ineligible. And I waited a couple of months and finally put in my third express entry profile, and it finally went through on a Wednesday. And by Friday, I received an invitation to apply for permanent residency. But it didn't end there. Once my application for permanent residency was ready to go and processed and sent in, I submitted an extension for my work permit 6 days before it would expire. Talk about living on the edge. Or immigration stories. I've never heard a boring one. And also, it has been a stressful time, or was a stressful time for me. And I can only imagine what it feels like for you guys, international students, post-graduation work permit holders that are stuck between what was the immigration system and what is or will be the immigration system based on all the changes that immigration is making. And I'm calling this period immigration purgatory. So once my application was in for permanent residency, I was waiting for it to be processed. Still, once it's in, of course, there is some sort of ease that, okay, fine, you know what, I feel a little bit fine that it's in, but still, you could be rejected. You still don't know. So the stress is still there. And I was waiting, while I was waiting for this permanent residency application to process, I remember my brother asking me in about February, March, are you coming home for Christmas? And I was like, I cannot see the future. Don't ask me about the future. There is an application in process and it is a brick wall in front of my face. I cannot see past this immigration application. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to be rejected and I'm going to have to go back home. Just don't ask me about the future. And I remember feeling so anxious when he asked me and had to tell him, like, just don't. Ask me about tomorrow. I can tell you about tomorrow. Don't ask me about Christmas. I can't see the future. And I felt like I couldn't plan. I felt like I didn't know what the future was going to hold for me just because there was this application for permanent residency in process. I didn't know. So I can only imagine what's going on in people's minds, in their hearts right now with regards to all these changes. Hi, Kim, over on YouTube. Welcome to another live, and the people joining us over here on Zoom, welcome. Now, ultimately, of course, the story ended well. I'm still here, right? So I became a citizen within 5 years of moving to Canada as an international student. And now, if my application were in, or if I were in the express entry pool in 2023 or 2024, dog would have nyam masapa, because I would not have received an invitation to apply because my points were in the 400s, high 400s, about 490. But still, right now, in the last year, I can't believe it's been a year, the points have not fallen below 500 points. So we have some veterans on here, some people, some very familiar faces that are joining me on Zoom and on YouTube. So welcome. Please feel free to drop in the chat where you are in your immigration journey. So you're going to see on screen, it's here, right? On screen. Put an S in the chat if you're a student or international student. Put a P if you're a post-graduation work permit holder. Put an O if you are outside of Canada or some other status of the sort. And put a PR if you are a permanent resident. Let me know where you are in your immigration journey. Today, on our Sundays, we usually post our immigration stories. And today, the Our Immigration Stories feature is you guys. Whether you are inside of Canada or outside of Canada, you all have a story. I know that there are some of you who are here for a while trying to figure out your way either to get to Canada or to stay in Canada. And I want you guys to share as much as you feel comfortable, whether in the chat or if you can unmute yourself over here on Zoom. Let us know how you're feeling with regards to all these immigration changes, because the changes are not just affecting people in Canada, they're affecting people also who are outside, who are coming to school with their spouses. They've changed that, can't do that again. And people's plans and lives have been shifted up and shaken up. And how has it been? I'm hoping that the quality is good over there on YouTube, the video quality, the quality is perfect over here on Zoom as far as I can see. So hopefully you guys are seeing good quality and hearing me quite well. So we have some post-graduation work permit holders over here, and we have some students. Welcome. Let me know in the chat over here. Well, I think we have an O. We have an O over here, right outside of Canada. We also have a work permit holder on a closed work permit. And we also have another international student. So I want to start with the students because I feel like you guys have been, well, you and the post-graduation work permit holders actually have been affected the most, more so because you are in Canada now. It's not like you were trying to come and you never come, because then that's kind of like, okay, but you're here now and then you're just trapped in all these changes. How are these changes affecting you? How are you feeling about the changes? And how are you feeling? Anxious, nervous, worried? Tell me in the chat or unmute yourself. Feel free to unmute yourself over here. Nobody can see your name or your identity or anything like that. If you feel free to unmute and just kind of share a little bit about what's happening for you as international students. And if you guys over here on YouTube want to join me on Zoom, here's the Zoom link to join the Zoom chat if you want to let your voices be heard. But if you feel free to unmute, let me hear. Let's share your immigration story today. Don't be shy. I see some familiar faces here. I don't want to call your name. Feel free to join me on Zoom. Kim, I'd love to hear you on Zoom, because I know that Kim is a veteran YouTube liver, a YouTube live attender, veteran. All right, see some more people piling in here on Zoom. Feel free to unmute yourself, guys, or drop it in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with in terms of letting us know how are these changes affecting you right now. This is about you. I know how I feel for you. I feel anxious and nervous because I don't know what these changes are doing to you, but also I know what these changes mean for you and your immigration story. So welcome if you're just joining us over here on Zoom or even over here on YouTube. Drop your thing in the chat. S for student, P for postgraduate work permit holder, O if you're outside of Canada, and PR if you're a permanent resident, just kind of stepping in here. So we have some feelings over here from a international student. She's nervous. She or he, I'm sorry, that might be a he. Feel free to correct me. Nervous at this rate. They're one step from taking away the post-graduation work permit, right? And what do we do then? Exactly. There's a lot of changes in the pipeline, and we don't know that even if you're an international student, if in September they may strip away the post-graduation work permit allowance for people who are not in in-demand programs. So that is scary. Thank you for bringing that up. What do you do then? Yes, that is a very good question. What do you do then? I do want to put a quick disclaimer in here that I'm not an immigration consultant, and this session isn't an immigration consultation session. This is a community support session to let your voices be heard, because there are people and resources available to help you depending on how this situation has affected you. But the best way to get through to them, the best way to get help from them is to have the powers that be understand really what you're going through because of these changes. Because unfortunately, when immigration decides overnight that they're changing things, sometimes I think they forget that there's real people under the umbrella. It's like they just remove the umbrella and it's pouring rain and it's thunder and lightning, and they forget sometimes that there's real people on here. Not that they don't know, they definitely know, but sometimes the effects that it is having on people emotionally, mentally, physically, all of that. People are having to pack up their homes and leave or do different things. Some of them have children, some of them have children with special needs, and they need the resources and assistance here that they have available to versus what they have available to in their home country. So hi, Kim, you're over here. I know you're outside of Canada. But Kim, if you are open to sharing, I know that you were outside of Canada. You wanted to come, and they stripped away the allowance for you to bring a spouse. And I know that changed a lot of people's plans. So feel free to unmute if you're comfortable, Kim, sharing. Are you still there? Yes. If you're comfortable sharing how this change has affected you and what you feel about them. And anybody else, is an open invitation. Yeah, are you allowed to? Sure. Can you unmute yourself? Or do I need to let you? There you go.
Hi, can you
Hi.
hear me?
I can hear you well, loud and clear.
Yes, thank you. What I would say, I would have paid a deposit really early on in January,
Mm-hmm.
way before, way before the changes would have been made.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I am fighting tooth and nail to get back that deposit.
Mm.
Because,
Really?
yeah, because they basically stated that in order for me to get back the deposit, I would have had to be rejected for the student visa. I did
Visa.
not even bother to submit the student visa because it did not make any sense. I
Mm.
have been looking at, remember I told you I was looking at some master's programs because I
Yeah.
do have a first degree, but I found initially looking at the master's programs where it's a little too expensive for me. And being that I would have came with my spouse at that point in time, I just said, you know what, let me just do a 2 year diploma and call it Wally. We would have came up with at least the first year's rent, at
Mm-hmm.
least the first year's tuition. We would have came with that fully, so that all he had to do was just work and cover food for the first year. The rent would have been paid upfront for an entire year. That way we don't have to worry about, where we're going to live, etc. I have been doing research on apartments between um, London, Ontario, and Alberta, which is really where I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a few apartments, and when those changes came, I was like, all I can do now is just admire these apartments because it just doesn't make sense anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, no, he made the change whereas the spouses now cannot come if you're doing anything basically under a master's.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a little bit unfair because, I mean, everyone's situation is different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who's going to have, let's say I was coming to do a bachelor's, who's going to have 4 years of money sitting down in the bank account doing nothing?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started looking at masters, and master's programs are just, no, they're just way too expensive.
Yeah.
I found one at University of British Columbia,
Mm-hmm.
$99,000 for an MBA.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely not.
Mm.
No. So right now I'm just even looking for jobs, looking at other immigration streams that I could have maybe gone through.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them requiring a job offer, and even trying to get a job outside of Canada, honestly, is so hard. Really,
Yeah.
really hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're non-existent, and I mean literally non-existent to these people.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I just listen to the immigration news, and I'm in contact with my friend who's up there. She actually went up there last year before all of the changes.
Just before, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, she's doing fine, but then me that visited in November. And honestly, when I came there in November last year, I came there and I started applying to schools. This
Yeah.
was obviously before everything was, up
Mm-hmm.
in arms. And I literally applied for about almost 30 schools. I kid you not. And then for January to come and then all these changes, and I'm just the only thing I could not do was cry
Mm.
because I felt that every avenue,
Mm-hmm.
the door was closing. The door was closing. The door was
Yeah.
closing.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I'm just in hot Barbados, wanting to be in minus 30 degrees in Alberta for her. So right
Oh.
now I don't know what my options are right now. I don't know. My friend was telling me to go through express entry. My points are not that much, but you don't even think my points give them. me being 34, 35, my points were not even coming to 400.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
410 the most, and that was if I went back to do my language test.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. So
So
see, even that, like that I didn't even think about for even you guys outside. Like I remember we'd spoken about it, but thanks for reminding me that you paid tuition. You
yes, I
paid
did.
some money.
And
And
now I'm fighting tooth and nail to get them back. It's like they don't even want to give you back.
but that's crazy.
It is. When they know full well that, this is the situation that I explained to you, I gave them a full essay email saying
Yeah.
why I need back my money because I can no longer come because of all the changes. And it's not
Thank
like
you.
they don't know the changes were made. You know the full well that the changes were made. And you know full well that students are going to pull out. Please
Yeah.
return me my money. 2,300 Canadian dollars is not $23.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm. So affecting you emotionally, physically, mentally, and financially. I
everything
needed to
in
put that.
one.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right, well, I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is. From what I've been reading, the changes were needed, but I mean, I feel like there should still be some kind of avenue for experienced persons instead of penalizing people the older they get. I think that's very unfair.
Yeah. The tricky thing with Canadian immigration is that they're looking at their labor sector. We know this, right? They're like, what does Canada need? And from that assessment come the changes around even the post-graduation work permit is
Mhm.
really because it's not if you're smart enough or young enough anymore. It is if you are part of this in-demand occupation or sector and you're
Mhm.
smart enough and young enough, then come.
Mhm.
When I say smart enough, I mean whatever educational requirements they have, language requirements, and the age requirements in terms of not requirements, but the points that you get based on your age. And yeah, it's about Canada.
Indeed, I've even looked at my friend was telling me to learn French, and I'm like, I dropped French in third form. A
Mm,
good 15 years ago. You really think that I'm going to quote unquote, for lack of a better word, waste my time learning French? No,
well, it would give 50 points.
it would give me the points, but I
Mhm.
will have to literally learn French from scratch and do
Mhm.
it every day. And right now, I don't think I could dedicate the time to that. That's the truth.
Mm. Yeah,
Because
well, if you see it kind of like going to school, then then
I always wondered what benefit does learning French do other than giving you that direct permanent residence path? Because you're not required to speak it when you go to the borders. You're not required to speak it when you go for a job. It only helps you if you go to Quebec. What other benefit does that program have other than a direct PR? None.
well, so I can tell you a couple of things. One, it's the
Mhm.
points on express entry. Two is
Mhm.
Francophone immigration. So Francophone immigration, this is general information, guys, not immigration advice. Francophone immigration, once you can prove that you are competent in French by way of a language test, Francophone immigration allows you to immigrate to Francophone communities outside of Quebec once you're able to get a job offer from an employer, and there's no knock or tier limitation as of right now.
Oh, you
Uh,
need a job offer? I didn't even know you needed a job offer for the Francophone communities.
that's for Francophone immigration that is separate from getting a draw through express entry because you know French,
Oh, okay,
right?
okay.
So there's more than one stream, but also funny enough, I know that there's an idea that okay, so only Quebec really speaks French, but there's francophone communities outside of Quebec, and that's what the government is trying to develop. And
Mhm.
I was at a networking event recently. It was called the Canadian Immigrant Fair, that's put on by the Canadian Immigrants brand, and there was a popular bank there. And when I was just interacting with the person there, and I said, "Well, why are you guys here today? Like, are you trying to open accounts or no, they're hiring?" And she was very candid and said, right now, this is a big bank across Canada. And they were representing the bank in the fair in Ontario, so in Toronto, Ontario, and they said right now we're only hiring bilingual people.
Mm-hmm. I don't
So
even know anyone, honestly, here in Barbados that could dedicate that one-on-one time with me to learn that French.
well, you don't necessarily need to know somebody in Barbados to do it. There are virtual, so we can talk about this. Of course, you and I
Yeah.
can get together and we can talk about this. But French is not just to be seen as necessarily a pathway to immigration, but also beneficial in terms of career mobility within Canada,
Mhm. Very
and
much so.
even how much you can get paid as being a bilingual person in banking, something like banking. You're in
Yeah,
banking,
still in banking, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The
Because
person
Bank of
literally said
Montreal
to me,
is,
we're
yep.
only hiring bilingual for this entire cycle of hiring.
Oh, there.
That's what they said. And this is somebody who is recruiting in Toronto.
Was
Okay.
that a success?
I don't know. Like that's just my conversation with them. I
Understood.
don't know how many people were bilingual at the fair or showed interest. I was just trying to understand what their role was at the fair, if they were hiring or trying to get people to open bank accounts, and they were there as recruiters.
Okay.
So that's an eye opener for why French outside of immigration. It's definitely useful outside of Quebec. And the government is making by way of Francophone immigration, trying to build Francophone communities outside of Quebec. So,
Understood.
and you don't need to know somebody in your own country that can teach you French. And speaking with a French tutor could help you to understand realistically how much time commitment, how long it's going to take, all of that stuff. Because if you're considering going to school, this
Mhm.
is one of your school courses.
Correct.
Yes, all the other ones. And
All
the
right.
graduation and all of that stuff. To the test, you're bilingual as far as the test is concerned. Right? I want
All
to
right.
drop into the chat right here, but let me know if you have anything else to bring up. Thank you so much for sharing and being so open and honest. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you too.
Did you want to drop in anything else?
Um, Nothing that I can think about right now. I did realize when you spoke about the French though that even for the Atlantic immigration, most of those jobs were also asking for French
Yeah.
and the rural and northern immigration pilot.
So
I mean, to be exact.
you definitely have an advantage if you know
Yeah.
French.
So
Mhm.
I will consider it. I feel like when I travel again this year, I'm gonna do over the English test for sure to see if I can get a
Mhm.
better score. Because I did get CLB 8, but I mean, I speak English every day. And I know where I should be able to get 10.
Mhm.
And within the next year, I'm going to consider the French and give myself a year to learn it and then write the test.
Mhm. Sounds good.
Yeah, but I will book that other consultation for sure.
Yes. All right. Talk soon. Thank you so
Yes,
much for
please.
sharing. I'm
Thank you
just
too.
gonna share some things in the chat over here on YouTube. So we have somebody from outside of Canada that's joined us here, and she's dropped a chat, something in the chat. So I'm not surprised by the changes. I expected this from seeing all the protests and complaints from the Canadians. Plus, my brother, who is in Canada, had warned me from 2023, if you're planning to move, move. My niece was able to get back her refund, but we had made the request long before the school's refund deadline. Okay, so that's helpful. So this is somebody who had paid some money. The changes changed their plans. They asked for a refund. They got it back before the deadline. We just told them that there's a family emergency, etc. But I didn't get back the full amount, of course. There is a component of it that's non-refundable, and that's something to consider. When you do pay, check the fine print. The fine print tend to say stuff like non-refundable. Unfortunately. So thank you so much for sharing that over here. Anybody else open to sharing? If you're over here on YouTube and feel like you want to join us over here on Zoom and feel comfortable sharing, I'm gonna drop it in the chat there. That's the Zoom link to join us directly on Zoom. We have some people just listening in. Hello, thank you for listening in and thank you for being here, taking the time out. I don't want to call anybody's name, but if you feel comfortable unmuting, or just if you can't unmute for some reason, drop it in the chat and I'll unmute you and allow you to share your immigration story. Yes. So somebody else in the chat here on Zoom is saying that, Christina, you're right. While she was job hunting here in Canada, so she came in Canada job hunting, and then a few employers saying that French was a plus, definitely a plus. So it's not just good for immigration, it's good for your pay too. Job opportunity and pay, higher paying jobs. Yes. Welcome if you're just joining us on YouTube. Drop your where you are in the immigration journey in the chat. P for post-graduation work permit holder, S for student, O for outside of Canada, and if you're a permanent resident, just hanging out with us. Like myself here. Oh, and I'm not a permanent resident, but yeah, just hanging out with us. Let us know. To add insult to injury, there is a general federal election coming up sometime next year. And depending on who wins, immigration could change. I don't know how. There's a few predictions as to what could happen. So it's going to be an interesting season between now and the end of next year to see how things unfold and how things change. Somebody's over here asking, why is it getting so complicated though? Here's my theory. When they opened up express entry, especially, and that was more like a formalized, automated standard of this point-based system, right? Because there was a point-based system before. It was less, I don't want to say formal, but it wasn't as automated as express entry. You jump in, you do this, da, da, da. At the time, the criteria was most likely to succeed. So that means that you had enough English, knowledge of English language. You were in the perfect age to be in the labor market. You're not going to retire soon. You were educated enough to have like a skilled job or something, and other criteria that made you most likely to succeed if you came to Canada. However, as time went by, especially post-COVID, right? They realized that here's all these people, 900,000 open temporary resident permits, but still there are labor shortages. There's healthcare is still suffering, construction, and the problem that immigration is trying to solve is it is also creating. So if there's a labor shortage with the existing population and a million more people come, that means the labor shortage is going to increase when you bring these people anyway. But anyways, so they said, if you're smart enough, most likely to succeed, come. Now that you're here, they're not going into the in-demand occupations because they're in business or HR or project management or something that's not necessarily in line with an in-demand occupation. And so the labor shortages continue, especially with the growing population. So now they've said, okay, you know what? We actually need to be a little bit more strategic about this immigration thing. And now they're attaching the immigration programs to the labor shortages. So that's why within express entry, you have all these category-based draws that will speak to healthcare, that will lead people to STEM, that will lead people to construction, trades, different things. And so it's not necessarily getting complicated. It seems complicated, but it's kind of getting smarter. As unfortunate as the repercussions are, it's just getting smarter based on the whole purpose of immigration within Canada, which is to help Canada. So there's a question here also, the labor shortage. Can they be open to persons who have little to no experience in the labor shortage jobs? So for labor shortage, for jobs or how jobs are classified within immigration, they use the NOC code, right? National Occupational Classification. Within the NOC code or under the NOC code, each NOC code will have what the requirement is for you to say that you are this job occupation name or this is your job title. So if you are a welder, it's going to say something like you have a certified welding certificate, maybe, or education or something, right? And so the experience came over here on Zoom is going to be based on the requirements of any specific immigration program. So the immigration program will say you need to have 1 year experience in a similar knock as the one you're applying to. Some of them say that, some of them don't. And so it just depends on, one, the requirements of the job offer itself, two, the knock that you're trying to fall under, and what are the requirements of that knock. Because if that knock says that you have some level of experience, then you need experience. So everything is kind of just in that black and white zone of knock, description, all of that stuff, right? So you can't say I'm a caregiver if you've never had experience or the education of a caregiver per se. Yeah, unless you're going to go and get experience as a caregiver, then after that experience, then you're a caregiver. So that's, hope that makes sense. So yeah, it's not getting complicated, it's actually getting smart, unfortunately. Unfortunately, but fortunately, right? This, at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense for for anybody to come here when there's not enough doctors, there's not enough houses, there's not enough this, there's not enough that, right? So Canada really has to get their house in order, and that's what they're doing, right? Some things got away, really got away during COVID. Yeah. Any other voices willing to share their immigration story? We are going to go in about 15 minutes, but I do want to give you guys the space. There's people in the chat, so I appreciate you guys for chatting. I can share some stories of some people who are right now trapped in this immigration purgatory. And this was a part of the last video I put out, because some people feel that once you go to school in Canada, then you're set, right? And that's not the case. So even if you're still interested in studying in Canada, you really need to be smart about it. You can go and check out my last video about what you must know before you decide to study in Canada in 2024 and beyond, right? But there are people who came, they have some like about 482 or 486 points is what her points was. And this was in about November, and her permit was going to expire in January. And so it did, right? Because the points have not dropped that low in a while. And so she did not receive an invitation to apply for permanent residency. So she's now trapped in this place of, what do I do? Do I stay here as a visitor? Do I leave? Can I come back? And that's one thing that I kind of want to give a little bit of reassurance to some people who will inevitably fall out of status. Everybody cannot stay. That's the truth about it. Based on the numbers of open work permits and the immigration caps within each year, the numbers don't add up. So everybody cannot stay, okay? Sorry, FYI. So if you can't stay, and if you don't have enough points and you have to go home, it's not like your dream has ended. I remember being in this place and feeling like going home was the end of the world, and it actually isn't, okay? If you go home and work for a year in your home country, you'll get more points based on your express entry profile, right? And I'm not saying this to scare you, but it's important to understand the reality and where you need to find yourself, okay? You can go home and you can work for another year or two in your country, and you're still able to be in the express entry pool, and you who are already in Canada have an advantage over people who are outside of Canada because you've gone to school in Canada. You even have an advantage over people who are just coming to school in Canada because they still don't have enough points because they're still going through the system, right? So if you are right now at 482 or 486, and if you go home and work for a year, you'll get 50 more points. Now, in a year, we don't know what the immigration system is going to be, right? However, based on what we know right now, in a year, if you go home and say, you know what, I'm going to work for a year and I'm going to learn French, at 100 points, right? So it's not the end of the world, and it would be a break from expensive old Canada. I would be fine right now to go home and live in my parents' house right now, to not have to pay so much money to be an adult, right? So just think about that possibility in a positive light as best you can. You know, it'll be a break from adulting to this extent. A break from winter, which is usually good, right? And also an opportunity. The opportunity is not missed, the opportunity is not lost, right? So I do want to empower you to just think through a plan B if it comes to that. I don't want you to be scared, Shamari, right? I don't want you to be scared. It's not, but I do want you to understand the reality that the maths doesn't add up, okay? So a couple of things here. So I think the upcoming election, it does. The upcoming election plays a big role in the changes. Yes. The voters are frustrated. Yes, they have to keep the voters happy, and the voters are Canadians, right? And some of the sentiments across Canadians aren't very positive. That's another reason why I wanted to have this call as well, is because sometimes when Canadians throw immigrant hate, mean comments, whatever the case, it's like they forget that it's real people with families and children, and we didn't come here on a boat. You know what I mean? Like, we did the things that were required of us to receive the right of permanent residency, or a permit to work here, or a permit to study here, and should be treated like people, right? But some of them are frustrated and upset because I think that they did not sustainably plan this population growth. Population growth when babies are born is different from population growth when you bring 1 million grown people who need houses and cars and school and doctors. There was a time when I went into the pharmacy and there was no Dayquil on the shelf. There was no Dayquil is the day version of NyQuil. There's none on the shelf, right? Because supply and demand not necessarily keeping up, and everybody was sick and whatever the case is, and the restocking. So things like that, little things like that, the supermarket shelves need to be taken into consideration when you're going to grow the population by 1 million people in a year, which is like artificial population growth, so to speak. So yes, definitely. So Keisha thinks that they're upset, they're frustrated, which is showing in the low ratings for Trudeau. So the party has to pivot to appease the electorate. Yes, potentially some election moves, but also a reaction to what is happening with regards to housing, rent, availability of family doctors, and just the repercussions of such huge population growth in a short amount of time. And it's not natural population growth, it's artificial in that it's like grown people planted versus babies being born who don't need a car or NyQuil or Dayquil, right? So Kim, some persons leave jobs at home. Question, how does returning home give you 50 points? It's not necessarily returning home gives you 50 points. It's another year of work experience in a skilled job that will give you more points. That's what can give you more points. And then if you put French on top of that, more points for you as well. So it's really about the work experience that you're gonna go home and do in your home country, right? Okay, we have about, what is that? 7 minutes before we go today. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was beneficial. I did want to get people together, more people who are willing to talk and share your immigration story. But you heard a little bit of mine and the stresses that came with my immigration journey. Some of you know it. Some of you are just being a reminder of what I went through in my journey. And it was like a 3-year period of just stress, pure stress. And I can only imagine what it feels like now, given the stress and the changes. So please feel free to share if you want to do any last minute talking over here. I don't know if Miss Davis over here is open to unmuting. and open to sharing. Or Sarah, anybody who wants to share your immigration story. Otherwise, I'll keep talking and then we'll go in a little while. But I appreciate you guys for being on here. Sarah, hi.
Hi, good evening. Are you
Good
hearing
evening.
me?
I can hear you perfectly. Yes.
Okay, great. Alright, so for me, I just finished a postgrad certificate in human resource management. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, it was a 1 year program. So I was actually looking to do another program, to at least get 3 years on my postgraduate work permit in
Mm-hmm.
order to give myself, a little time. And I was thinking about doing French and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But what I applied for was another program in business. And then
Mm.
I saw all the changes happening and I was like, okay, this is not good. So I tried to apply for a personal support worker program, and that way I could actually get a job as a nurse aide, because I know that personal support worker is not within the NAC code. So that's where I am at. However, I did an extension of my study permit from April,
Okay.
and I have not heard anything from IRCC as yet, and my permit expires at the end of this month. So I think that's where I'm at. But initially, the extension was for two things. Both was a new program that I'd applied for, and also because my HR program had a co-op to it, which was supposed to be done between May and August, but I didn't get one. So I just graduated last month. So I still have not heard anything as it relates to that. So that's where I am at. But really, I'm just hoping for an approval, and then hoping when I get that approval and do my second program, I can also be able to do French. And even if I'm not able to do French while doing the second program, at least if I get a work permit, then I can do French within that time period. So that's where I am at right now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm happy to hear that when you did the business thing, you realized what's happening and made that. So did you already apply for the support worker program?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and you got in.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Okay. Good. It sounds like you're navigating that nicely. So that sounds good. Thank you for sharing so much. For
Yeah.
anybody else who is hearing and it sounds like you, here's what she's doing, and it sounds like I like the direction. Is the PSW program, I'm assuming it's 1 year, right, Sarah?
Yes, it's 1 year, 8 months.
Yes, a 1 year program, Kim. Cool. All right, Ms. Davis, if you want to go ahead and share what you wanted to share briefly.
Sure.
Hi.
I graduated last month after a 4 year program in nursing, and I recently got an approval for the postgrad work permit. So I'm just working for the meantime, and I started learning French in May. It's going okay so far, but learning a new language can take time. So I'm just doing what I can to improve my skills and trying to see what can be done.
Okay, and so you said your program was in nursing?
Yeah.
Like practical nursing? Like what can you do in terms of work with that certification?
It's registered nursing, so the 4 year degree.
Oh, 4 year degree. Good for you.
Yeah.
Okay, and you are in an in-demand like healthcare. So,
Yeah.
okay, nice. And French, how's French going? What can you tell me? Like say a sentence in French. Is that too
Okay, I'll say my name again. So, je m'appelle Brianna Davis.
awesome?
Yes.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm happy to hear that. And thanks for shedding light on what you did in terms of school. I didn't know that. I know that you're not new to my community, so I'm familiar with your name and um 4 year registered nursing. Awesome. Good for you. So I feel
Thank
like
you.
so based on the changes, if you're open to commenting, Do you feel any bit of stress or anxiety? Do you feel pretty much okay considering you're in healthcare and nursing?
I would say I'm not overly anxious. I'm not, there's a lot of changes, so I know that like it can change in a minute to something else. But I'm just having faith and just hoping for the best.
Great. All right,
Yeah.
perfect. Well, I'm hopeful for you. Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you.
so much.
Thank you.
So there's another question on here, over on this side. So we just had somebody join. Hello and welcome, made by Ashley, post-graduation work permit holder. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Feel free to, there's up in the chat, there's a Zoom link. We have a couple more minutes before we drop off here. You can join us if you want to on mic and unmute, if you want to be on mic and share your story. Dree had a question. One question before you go. Can you shed some light on the tourism in Canada and as it relates to work and schooling? And I'm assuming that you're talking about in demand. So I won't speak specifically to any occupation or tourism or anything like that. What I can say is that if you want to know where there are labor shortages or where the government is trying to focus their efforts, look at the available immigration programs. So in express entry, there's category-based express entry draws. Just type in express entry category-based, and it will come up with 5 or 6 categories, and each of those categories have occupations under them, right? So you can check there if there is, if what you're looking for example, tourism is there. If it is not there, then you look at the provincial level. At a provincial level, the provincial nominee programs, where are their in-demand occupations focused, right? So in Ontario, they have some Ontario in-demand nomination stream thing. And it will tell you like, okay, construction or whatever. Alberta, you'll see if there's hospitality and tourism, all that stuff. So generally speaking, that if you want to know where there's a labor shortage, if you're on the right path, that's the direction that you should be looking. I hope that answers your question, Dree. It's not directly about tourism, but it's telling you where to go and find it, because at any moment notice things can change. So it's just keeping on top of those changes and whether that is an industry or a sector that the government is actively trying to fill with immigration. Another question over here on Zoom. I'm not sure if my study permit would be approved for PSW, given that I have my bachelor's already and would consider a PSW program. That's a good, that's a genuine concern, Kim, especially since they have attestation letters, the requirement of the attestation letters right now, and also are looking to make sure that, you know, things are in line with in-demand occupations at the end of the day. The best assessment of that, Kim, quite honestly, is an immigration consultant session, because they would know the trends right now based on your background, and they would be able to analyze whether if the immigration officer is going to kind of just be suspicious of your intentions if you do that, right? So definitely remember, I'm not an immigration consultant, so that is definitely with somebody that I can put you together with. But you can email me, we can chat, you have my contacts there, and we can decide what to talk to me about and when to go to the immigration consultant. Like if you're looking for that French tutor, all that stuff, we can talk about that, okay? So I think that is a wrap for now. I really hope this was helpful for you guys and trying to get some of you together. Feel free to message each other, find each other on YouTube. If you want to get together with each other, you can email me and I will ask permission to connect people, because sometimes it's helpful to have some level of support and community. And that's kind of what my platform tries to create. And also in these live calls and these sessions to help people to get together and have shared experiences, because sometimes, I know misery loves company, but it's sometimes comforting to understand that you're not alone in this. You are not. My journey was stressful. I know many people who are falling out of status right now and are kind of in this purgatory, whether they should stay or whether they should go. So yes, thank you so much for joining. Somebody over here, for those still looking, so somebody is putting a plug for Europe. For those still looking for options, Europe is a good place to look as well. School fees aren't as expensive depending on the course. Austria, Finland, Germany, etc. as alternatives if Canada is not the place for you. As always, if it was helpful, please smash the like button over here on YouTube. Just smash it, smash it, smash it, smash it. That's helpful for me and helpful for others. Somebody over here saying the UK don't want us. I think that's right now. People are immigrants, whatever. But you know what? Do what you have to do for yourself at the end of the day, right? So if this is the strategy, align yourself with the strategy and make it work for you, right? In whichever country. Thanks again for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe if you're not a subscriber right now, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you and bye. We're done on YouTube. And we're hanging up over here on Zoom. Thank you guys for joining.